This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. The best beer isn't brewed in a vacuum. It's brewed with your guests in mind. Every pour, every seasonal release, every new recipe starts with one question: what do people actually want to drink? In today's episode, we're diving into how breweries are using real taproom data to answer that question and brew what sells. From tracking style velocity to spotting daypart trends, our guests are breaking down how they translate point of sale insights into production plans that make sense for their business and their fans. Joining us are a few folks who've dialed in these processes. Juan Torres, co-founder and chief operating officer of Tripping Animals in Florida. Welcome to the podcast, Juan.
Thank you so much for the invitation, guys. Happy to be here.
Also, Brandon Stirewalt, director of operations for Town Brewing in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
And Ben Wolff of Arryved, who before he joined the company spent upwards of 8 years in the trenches, first managing the taproom at Left Hand Brewing, then running 3 different Denver Beer Company locations as director of guest experience. Now you're with Arryved. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Over the course of this conversation, we'll take a deep look at how taproom trends shape their brew schedules, packaging decisions, and even what styles get the green light or don't. This episode is brought to you interruption-free by Arryved, the all-in-one brewery platform trusted by hundreds of craft breweries nationwide. Built specifically for the craft beverage industry, Arryved combines powerful, customizable tools that simplify service and operations, keep sales data in one place, and help breweries turn insights into action. Arryved works side by side with taprooms to meet their needs in real time because no two service models, beer lists, or guest expectations are exactly alike. By elevating the guest experience and streamlining the back of house, Arryved lets makers focus on what really matters: their product, their people, and their community. Learn more at arryved.com. Well, let's get this started with a little bit of background. Juan, why don't you start things off? Give us a little bit of the Tripping Animals story in your story.
I'm going to do it as fast as I can. So, well, we're originally from Venezuela. That's where we started like 13 years ago, home brewing beers back in time and in a place that doesn't have that much culture. And after a few years of brewing in Venezuela and having a nano brewery brand, we decided to make the jump to Miami, specifically because we had family here that helped us out to found the project. And then in 2018, we finally opened doors. So we're running into a 7th year. We're 4 different founders. As I'm in charge of all the operations, and then we have the other 3 partners, one for marketing, sales, and the CEO. That's a little bit of our story.
That's great. That's great. Brandon, why don't you give us a little bit of the Town Brewing story in your story?
Yeah, so I've been in food and beverage most of my adult life. I left for a while to go in a few different sales jobs. I was in traveling sales and textbooks, and then furniture sales for a while. Got back into food and beverage with a brewing company here that was statewide distribution and self-distribution, Red Oak Brewing Company in North Carolina. They're one of the largest. Went from there to another smaller brewery, Triple C, and then took over here as director of operations about 3 years ago. Town Brewing is a small brewery. We're statewide distribution, but a smaller brewery located just outside of Uptown Charlotte. There's 4 home brewers that started the brewery, all practicing attorneys about 7 years ago, coming up in about 2 months. And so they're still full-time practicing attorneys, so they need somebody to run the ship for them. And so that's what I try to do is to be the boots on the ground at all times for our operations, whether that's overseeing brewing operations with our head brewer as to what we're putting out, to sales, to taproom and marketing, kind of all the above.
Sure. Okay, Ben, what's your story?
Yeah. Prior to beer, I actually spent 10 years in the coffee industry. Was a big homebrew nerd, decided I wanted to make the jump into the beer industry. I joined Left Hand Brewing Company as their taproom manager. From there, I got my certified Cicerone and ended up on like their A tasting team for quality assurance. After a little while, moved over to Denver Beer Company, just as the GM at that point. And from there, they ended up growing into a couple of locations. They opened a second tap room and then a sister company. And I helped establish those, get them up and running. COVID happened, and that was an interesting shift in dynamic and what was going on. And after that, I ended up at Arryved.
It's a true story. Our 2014 launch party for craft beer and brewing took place at the little space at Denver Beer Company at the original location that I think then became Cerveceria Colorado or whatnot. So that was a long time ago now, but it's a little bit of a blast from the past. Okay, so let's break it down. I think in this. You mentioned now, Ben, that this post-COVID world that we live in, quite a bit changed, not just in the world in general, but very particularly within this world of beer. And so, thinking about what is going on now in in this kind of taproom space, what are some of the biggest kind of then and now shifts that you all have seen, and maybe from a high level, Juan, are there some of the if you look at the pre-COVID versus post-COVID, what are some of the biggest kind of changes that you all have seen in that managing and operating that kind of taproom space and that kind of shift?
Well, for us specifically, change a lot, like our plans and our projections. Like we start only betting heavy in the taproom, and COVID happens, and then we open like all this crazy distribution that we needed to because we were closed, and that also opened us a lot of the opportunities that happened that came with it. Like get to know outside Florida, that was our main taproom. We got the canning line, and we started doing crazy things in order to put the beers outside. By that time, I think the industry was pretty different. We were doing a lot of heavy fruited sours, clogging lines, heavy triple IPAs, double IPAs. And right now, I think everything is coming kind of back. Like we're not doing that much heavy fruited sours. We're going more for the classic styles. We're doing more lagers, West Coast IPAs more than heavy ABV beers that we were doing pre-COVID and during COVID. That we were selling a lot of tons of cans through the door in the parking lot.
Sure. And, Brandon, while you weren't in this role currently for Town in this pre-COVID era, you were in that kind of brewery space. From your perspective, looking at it now, what were some of the biggest changes that you see from then to now?
One, I will say, pre-COVID, we were on a roll as a brewing industry, right? We were impervious to anything. And we were still on such an incline of breweries opening and people navigating towards breweries. And so I think we were still on such an uptick before our market had fully matured that it didn't matter what you did. If you built a brewery, people came, right? And I think COVID was probably a disruption that happened around a time in our industry that was probably going to have some of a bit of self-correction in it. It just changed what that format looked like. There were probably restaurants and bars and breweries that stayed open because of some relief acts and things like that maybe should have shuttered. It maybe breathed some new life into people that would have shuttered without it and without COVID, because there was a lot of time right there during that, especially the 2020 year and early 21, we were the Walmarts and Home Depots, right? People came to us to be able to have space and to be able to still exist in a world that seemed familiar to them because of the huge spaces that we lent. So I think a lot's changed through COVID, not all just because of it, but because of the age of our industry and where the boom hit and kind of what's went on since then. So, we've seen a lot of different taproom trends. Here again, there were parts of COVID that were really good for us because people didn't have other places to go in North Carolina, as most bars were closed. And somehow our, North Carolina Brewers Guild had signed a commitment with the governor to allow us to be open in those spaces to be. So for a lot of us, COVID was really good during that brewing space. And then we hit this weird rock bottom period where a lot of breweries had opened right during and right after COVID. And we saw, I don't want to say a saturation point, but maybe a maturation point of our industry here in North Carolina. and we had to navigate through that and really come out of it to our customer no longer comes in just because breweries are built and they're there. We just have to be very intentional about how we're inviting people into our house now.
For sure. And so, Ben, one of the big things we saw through this process, as labor has continued to get more costly, naturally, people in post-COVID environment think about what they're doing with their lives. There is less available labor potentially to work tap rooms, and those that do work expect to make higher wages and have fulfilling lives and all of those pieces. We've also seen interesting trends where maybe there is a little less bar service in the current environment. People like sitting separately maybe a little more than they once used to. So you see breweries from that kind of perspective having to manage the same, still provide high quality service, but may potentially do it with fewer employees, operating more efficiently, and also kind of serving people in a way that fits the way that people want to sit in a tap room and enjoy it. What are some of the big, some of those kind of key trends from your perspective, looking as how this kind of translates out through lots of different brewery tap room experiences of the folks that work with Arryved?
Yeah, I kind of like what Brandon said, where a lot of bars and stuff kind of through that COVID time did end up being places you couldn't go to. And the tap rooms ended offering that space where you could get out and about. A lot of them have patios, a little more room where you could travel and move around with it. Some of the trends that I ended up seeing from it was, and this is still true to this day, is running with much more skeleton staffs. A lot of places reverted to having actual order stations, being able to offer, the same level of service, but it ends up being a little more one-on-one versus maybe the whole bar or having servers walking around. There was some trending towards things like QR code ordering, or people being able to kind of self-service to still create that experience, or at least the illusion of getting your drinks in a timely fashion. People are a lot more willing to wait when they know their drinks are coming, but they're not waiting in a line necessarily. So those were some big shifts that happened, kind of how that ended up working. A lot of places using that data, the analysis of when you have people. I know something I was always really big on was actually using my my analysis of where my day parts were, where people were at, what time people started coming in. Should I be open later? Should I close earlier? But actually backing it up with real numbers to be able to do that was kind of a big part.
Then the thing you said about the QR codes and lines and all that through COVID, I actually got into a debate with our taproom manager the other day about can we do away with these lines and go back to just everybody walking up to the bar? And I was like, well, that was a world of utter chaos. I don't know how we existed for that long. We want to keep everything in order now. So I think a lot of those long-lasting things kind of still stick with us now.
People like lines for some reason too. I mean,
Yep.
you see a line, that now it tells them what they should do, and now it kind of explains it for them, and so we won't get that. That seems like a hot button conversation, and there are some folks out there who are diehard crowd around the bar people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I was just recently in Germany last month and noticed that same kind of QR or code ordering by table is also prevalent even in beer gardens in Munich. It seems like some of that has kind of come to stay. Juan, for you guys, how did your service model change at all? And how have you leaned into that? Because that's the challenge we all face in craft beer. You want to provide good service. You want people it's education is a big part of craft beer. And if you don't have some human interaction or some sort of interaction, it just feels impersonal and you're not going to learn something as a customer, but balancing that with the way that people want some freedom becomes this current challenge where everyone faces.
Totally. No, I think I would say we have a hybrid system where we already implemented the QR system that you can order from the table, but we haven't lost the thing with the lines. You have a way to order the beers and the food properly in the bar, so you can get that education or interchange of, okay, which beer should I try, or which one do you recommend me? And you have the people that are regulars that maybe they're comfortable sitting in their table. They already know what they want to order, so they do it through the QR code. But I think that's the beauty of it, and also the QR code provides you in a hybrid way that you, whenever you deliver the beer or the food, you can also upsell, but they feel comfortable because they're kind of in a table service kind of thing, but you don't have all these servers around bothering you like, oh, are you good or anything. Whenever I drop you the beer or the food, I can request you if you need anything else, and I can add it manually in your order without you needing to do it through the QR code. I just go through a system, add it, and then deliver to you the beer or the food. That's been like the biggest change for us here in the taproom after COVID. So I think that's the perfect blend that we have right now, without just be completely like order your thing and then I bring you your beer and your food. And I would say that's the perfect combination.
That's interesting because it allows the customer to feel empowered to do their thing, but also allow you to have that kind of point, but also then not have to staff in a way that can be full service order taking and running and everything else all at the same time. You can still keep a manageable staff and keep costs at a place where you can also keep things affordable for people. Yeah, Brandon, how have you all adapted your service model around that?
So one thing that was put in at town, and we didn't know how huge it was going to be for us through COVID, and then obviously now it's just a part of who we are, and something that I recommend every brewery out there figures out a way to do is have a second point of service, and really have that second point of service be focused to an outside area within your brewery. Not every brewery has outside space, so I shouldn't say every brewery there, but every brewery with an outside space should focus on how to serve those guests while they're outside. A lot of that is we do serve food here, so we can't have dogs inside. And everybody knows how important the fur friends are to our business models. So we have an outside point of service, but what was done in our build out was really intelligent. Was we have our bar actually butts up to the outside wall that adjoins to where our patio is. So we just have a roll up garage door on that part of the bar. So our bar, we still run one bar, but we get 2 points of service out of that. Really 3 points of service if we'd like to be able to run 2 points inside, and then 1 point of service outside. And that point of service outside is the difference maker for us. It's huge to have people who have the kids running around, the dogs out there, just people that they really don't want to vacate the outside to come inside for music playing or whatever that is. That allows us to run a huge amount of volume out of that, but still keep our staff pretty minimal for what it would be to have two completely separate points of service, to where you would have to staff both of those. It cuts out probably at least a half body, if not a body, most of the time on our labor costs on that. So that's been huge for us to be able to have multiple points of service there with that one bar. The other part of it is we do go to QR codes as well, but we entered into the 21st century and went to a digital menu board. I know a lot of breweries out there have a lot of handwritten fun stuff that's really cool and looks the personality of your brewery, but our ability to update our menus in real time and cut down on a lot of labor hours on that was a really big deal too. Just to take a 75-inch television and turn it sideways and create a digital menu board behind our bar.
On the point of service thing, I saw the same thing at Monday Night Brewing, and I was in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, where they had rented out the inside space to a private group, but the same bar that served the inside also served the patio with a roll-up door, and so they could still serve all their customers at 5 o'clock, on a Thursday, outside on the patio while having this rental going on and everything, but also from that same kind of 2-point service point, all part of one same draft system, and pretty efficient that way and pretty smart. And what you say about the digital menu board is interesting, and I think this is a piece that I constantly think about, especially as you move to QR code ordering and kind of empowering customers in this sense. Now, the key on that, if you don't have a bartender or a beer tender sharing information about the beers directly, you got to make sure that all the information is out there so that people can make decisions for them, which means that you need to have compelling descriptions. You need to have an information management system of sorts to make sure that all the information about beers, and this is like just completely accelerated in the world of craft beer, where you might be releasing a new beer or two every week and keeping all of this new information about new beers constantly coming out updated, correct, so that when somebody is pulling that up on their QR menu, that it actually sells because it's actually correct and compelling and doesn't just like wither there on the menu and not move because information isn't correct. How talk to me about how you will manage that kind of like information flow, because I think it's kind of an appreciated skill in this kind of retail space. You're connecting out through consumers with these. You're connecting out through other platforms with beer menus. There's the kind of social things that consumers are using to also check up on these, and keeping that data in a place that makes sense can be its own challenge. How do you all manage around that?
Are people good at that? I would love any tips to help manage that. No, I think for us, a lot of it is we run continual education with staff. Our head brewer, Fetty, is very, very adamant about he wants staff to know his beers, is passionate if he knows his beers. And so we're really thankful for that. We try to, anytime a new beer releases, we do an alley rally and a huddle, but we also have behind our to-go cooler that's right beside of our bar. We make sure we magnet up all the talking points, all the things, so they can physically in front of them every day see it. We also have that in a shared drive. And then we have it in our Untapped. We encourage our folks to go to Untapped, check our ratings on a regular basis, encourage people to rate our beers on Untapped as well. So a lot of that is a big part of it. There's some too that, as much data as we want to weaponize our staff with, sometimes I'll also have to give the KISS philosophy of don't overwhelm people who aren't craft beer drinkers with too much information, or where they just get confused and everything becomes diluted and now they don't understand anything, especially when we're, Friday, Saturdays with the inundated line, Sunday afternoon at 3:00, you got to get 30 seconds in with somebody to be able to serve them and keep the line moving. So some of that is we really try to weaponize with 3 is the magic number for us. 3 talking points, descriptive words that we use for each beer. And those are also on the menu up top. We also try to coach people on, hey, what do you usually drink? If somebody says, I'm not a beer drinker, don't just put them to the lightest thing we have or the fruitiest thing we have. Ask them what kind of cocktails they usually drink. Ask them what type of wine they usually drink, and see if we can find a similar pairing with that. So I do think that, again, to say, I think we've got a fairly decent system, but I'm always open to listen to new ways of doing that, because it is a perpetual pursuit of staff education on how to get them to communicate the product to the general public on a regular basis.
Ben, do you have some background on that? In terms of any kind of insight into the ways of producing that information, or done any A/B testing on the kinds of descriptions that work better than others? I'm curious if there's some data about that. Again, since we're empowering consumers to make some of their own decisions at a table, you've got to find a compelling way to to get it there for them, get them to make that purchase.
I think Brandon hit it right on the head, right? Like, I know on the industry side, I did the same thing where it was all about staff training, getting them to be able to taste a beer and hit those descriptors real quick on their own. One of the best things you could do with somebody is just literally be like, here, taste this, and I'm going to taste it with you, and we're going to talk about the key points to see if you like it up front and kind of go from there. I do know, even for the menus and stuff, it's something that I've worked with a handful of folks is, you got to have both parts up there. The quick hits, where somebody who's not a big beer drinker, they want to know words like light, gentle, dark. To them, that hits them and resonates with them. But you get a more advanced beer drinker in there and they're going to be like, well, that means nothing. And they're going to be the ones who want to see that big, long description. They want to have a deeper conversation with them. So it's really having both things available to people because that's your audience. It's everyone, advanced and not advanced. I love that Brandon brought up wine drinkers and cocktails because like you can deduce a lot from the things that people like to drink that's not beer that might guide their decisions as well, with similar profiles, flavor characteristics, kind of all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if they're drinking a big, bold Italian earthy wine, maybe we do steer them to an amber or a bock, instead of putting them to a fruit beer, right? I mean, I think there's a lot you can deduce from that. And sometimes you have to be careful on the descriptors too, being like, and Juan, I know you've probably seen this, we'll say that we get notes of grapefruit from hops on an IPA, and now people think it's a grapefruit IPA, right? So we have to be a little careful of how much we're catering to the beer drinker there, to your point, and how much we're putting out for the novice on that as well.
Yeah, I've for a good year in 2016, 2017, we owned the bar here in Fort Collins, Tap and Handle, and I used to have to write our beer, descriptions for all this, and I would try to focus that first like 7 words, first one line on something that kind of summed it up, and then all the sentences after that get geekier. So if somebody wanted to pull those first 7 words, it was easy to understand and use common flavors that everybody, through food in particular, that people could connect with. Juan, for you guys, you mentioned that some of those specialty beers that you all focused on have become less important in the overall mix. But it's still you still have an adventurous consumer that wants to come try new things, from you. Totally. How do you then kind of structure and help sell those in this kind of hybrid structure so that people understand what they are and things don't just get onto the menu but don't move?
So no, the first thing for sure is the education that we need to provide, like to our staff, to the bar managers, to the bar beer tenders and everything. So we try to submit the most information that I can from the drips, from the beers we're dropping each week, like, and send a message to our chat group, like, okay guys, it's a collaboration, I don't know, with other hub, we're using these hops, you're gonna spec these kind of flavors, you have the profiles of the hops, so you can talk about it with the people that wants to know more about the beer, how we do it, which yeast we use, or I don't know, all of those questions happen time to time. But if you have a new beer drinker and you want to drop like a couple words or a couple of things, hints about the flavors you're going to get, those are easy to take. Like, for example, if we have 6 different hazy IPAs, for a guy that doesn't drink that much IPAs, a lot of them are going to be too similar. So you want to play around the different hints of the hops that you're getting. If you're having Amarillo or Citra or let's say Cinco, it's going to be easier for them to explain. So I think the most important part that we need to do is to keep on training our staff. And then in the menus, right now we don't have that part of the big storytelling behind each beer. Is pretty simple. Specifically here in Doral in South Florida, like they want to try to get quicker to the same things as lighter or hoppy, or it's heavy fruited sour with the few fruits that we have. But we have seen that in the second taproom up in Oakland, there is a little bit more north. It's completely different. You have more people interested in the complex of the IPAs and how we do it, and a little bit more of the storytelling. I think they're into the craft beer more intense than the regular people that we receive here in Doral. So over there, we have a little bit more of time to explain and produce different menus that you can know more about us. But yeah, I think that the best part is we keep on teaching, like, let's say, classes and blind tastings with the taproom staff, so they actually know, because all of them, even though they drink beer, they like to drink, I don't know, lagers, so they cannot describe properly an IPA or a BA stout that it's aged in bourbon and whiskey barrels, and then we adjunct them with a lot of different things. So all of those hints also help with people that doesn't drink necessarily beer, but a lot of could enjoy a BA stout because you have a complexity of, let's say, a wine, even though it's way more thicker, but you have all those notes that people are going to enjoy. If they enjoy a really good wine, you can handle them 5 ounces of a barrel aged stout and they're going to enjoy it for sure.
So this also then feeds into a kind of monitoring and problem solving feature within that that front of house operation, where you can then triangulate back to the actual sales and identify if there are some issues, if beer isn't selling in the way that you might have expected it to sell, and use that data for problem solving. For you guys, have there been instances where you were able to use the kind of data backend sales data from your POS to identify some of those, whether it's we didn't really get the right message out to our staff around this, or maybe the description that we wrote of this isn't hitting exactly like we want it to, where there's some of those scenarios where you're able to kind of compare expectations to the reality of your sales data and solve some problems in that space?
Yeah, I will say it's so much of that we review every week, every Monday morning meeting. I'm pulling Arryved data and going through line for line with my entire production team, front of house team. What went down wrong and what went right, up into sometimes the name of the beer. We have had names of beers that were confusing or off-putting, and we changed the name and see sales data change on it. So tracking that from, hey, we gave it 2 weeks at this name, I really think that threw people off. I don't think that they knew that this was the hoppy pun or whatever that we intended it to be. We changed it to something simple that was more descriptive, that gave them a better entrance to it, and sales change. So I do think it's simple as that kind of matters. I also think that sometimes your customers will surprise you and you're not ready for it, right? It depends on the market you're in. You think, hey, we're going to throw this beer out and nobody's going to drink it, right? Like you'll see it a lot of times in, here in the city of Charlotte. We're in a major metropolitan area, but in 30 minutes in any direction, you can be in very, very rural farm area. And you'll see these very rural breweries that throw on these double and triple IPAs that think that they're not going to go fast, and they smoke through them, right? You think that that's going to be the area where everybody just comes in and drinks the lightest thing you have. But I really think a lot of the people that don't understand beer want to. Probably a reasoning they're in your brewery. There is the handful of people that came with the work group or came for the baby shower that's going on in your brewery that are going to just drink the lightest thing you have, and that's all the customer they're ever going to be. But I would say most people that are coming into our brewery surprise us. And I think a lot of what we try to do is look at that sales data of, if we're selling our light lager that's year round at a really high level, but then we drop an Italian Pilsner that's fire. I mean, it's just gas and it's not moving. Are we suggesting that enough? Can we look at that data that we're pulling and say to our bartenders, hey, on our regulars that are coming in that drink our Sprats, our light lager, 3 times a week, have you put an Italian Pilsner in front of them and had them try it? Because as soon as they do, they're going to drink that until it runs out. So I think, again, just making sure you understand your customer will surprise you and what opportunities you have to kind of create some of that.
Juan, for you guys, how do you work with that kind of data and integrate that into everything from how you sell the beer to ultimately what you decide to lean into style wise? Obviously, as you say, you have been shifting some of that style focus, in subtle ways, in that kind of, to be responsive to what drinkers want from you. How, what does the process look like? Is it weekly like it is for Brandon? How do you all evaluate that?
Yeah, we do have the weekly meetings on Monday where we evaluate all the production, the taproom, and we get all the data. Basically from the taproom, where we get and try to understand better. It also depends on the events that we promote daily. A lot of them are also focused like on Latin people, since we're here in Miami. But you also have a few of them that are more focused to the craft beer people, and it does show you how it changed the consumption. For example, with the Latin party, it's going to be all lagers and no mames, that is our more selling beer here in the taproom. But then it changed and shift, and you have a lot of the IPAs running super fast. Usually here in Doral, we run out pretty fast of the lagers and the sours, like an entry-level beer for the people that doesn't know much of the craft beer. But whenever we're close, let's say for our anniversary or for Ivory Jungle, the festival, you're gonna start seeing more people coming in and trying the triple IPAs and the double IPAs, and even weird styles that we don't produce like heavy in terms of volume, and we like to keep just in the taproom. Those also surprise you, as Brandon was saying, like those customers surprise you and they like that beer, but we don't do it that often, not because we don't want to provide it to the taproom, but because right now with the volume that we're doing, we also have like 80% of the beer going out the facility. So it's kind of a mix, whatever we're trying to provide to distro and what we're keeping in house. That's gonna be the most different ones that we don't sell in distro. That's kind of the planning that we try to do with the calendar yearly or monthly, where we're aiming, where is low season, where is high season, and that kind of change and blends the styles that we figured out to have in production.
In terms of taproom sales, being able to integrate like to-go beer after people are done drinking in the taproom, getting them to, take a 4-pack or a couple of 4-packs, or if you're Treehouse, then 5 cases full of beer home with them, is a great revenue opportunity. But we've also seen in this kind of post-COVID era, this interesting gap that develops between what people drink when they're on premise and what they actually buy and package to take home with them. How has that worked out for you all? Do you see some, like, it would be natural, I enjoy this beer that I'm drinking at the tap room, I want to take a 4-pack of that home. But at the same time, lots of brewers are reporting they take a different beer home even after they're drinking this lighter beer here in the tap room. Do you see, to-go packages from your locations tracking in an even way with what is going out on draft, or do you see some differences between what people buy on draft and what they actually take home in package?
I will say that we have seen a huge uptick in our Beyond Beer products that are going home with people. So we package a hard tea. It's a seltzer base, but we steep a tea in that and add some Emirati flavorings to that. So just a nice botanical seltzer, if you will, but we market it as a hard tea because of the presence of tea in that. We see those fly off our shelves, especially in the summertime. It's also a low-calorie option, so I don't want to say it's a healthy alternative, but it is a more health-conscious crowd that is going after those. Same thing with we've started packaging a hop water that we market as our NA beer. It's our NA sour. It's easier to recreate that sour taste without going through fermentation. So it's basically just a hop water with some flavorings in that. We have a raspberry hibiscus sour. So we package an NA of that. And then our THC beverage, we've also seen a tremendous larger ratio of that to go than what we see sales in-house on that. Otherwise, though, I mean, it's fairly across the board. Seasonal spikes when something drops. We see heavy push on it up front, and then we're trying to move the last 2 cases as always on, before we will ever want to go to fire sale on it. West Coast IPAs and light lagers are still a banger for people to take home. So those are kind of the styles we're seeing. But again, that packaging Beyond Beer category and having that to go in your tap room, I think has been a game changer for our to-go stuff.
How do those align for you guys, Juan?
It's kind of the same. We don't have those beautiful options that he was mentioning. We're working on it to have like an NA option to go and all of those drinks. But what recently changed a lot of people getting beers to go is that we start offering single cans. So that gives you opportunity of not taking the whole 4-pack. So you can try one beer or do a mixed 4-pack. You can take it home, try and bring it back, or usually drink it in the tap room and then decide where or which one to go. Also, there's a lot of people, it's amazing whenever it happens, they just drop by, have a lager, and then they take a whole case of mixed IPAs and sours. So they don't drink those while they're staying in the tap room, but they're taking them home. But I think it has been really pleasure. Also, whenever we do a big drop with another big name, let's say we're doing a collaboration with Other Half or with Xul, that's something that people goes crazy like on the social media. Where are you dropping it? You have available there yet in Oakland or in Doral. So you see people coming just to take their 4-packs and they're gone. They always grab a beer, as I mentioned, and it's a lager, a lighter beer, and then they're happy with their beers to go.
So they'll come buy a lager and then they'll take that 4-pack of triple or double IPA, to go with them. Absolutely. Well, when you say selling single cans, that sounds like another SKU nightmare for me from a POS perspective. How does that work with the system you use?
Well, it has been pretty easy. Like we have a different, like we have the beer to go, we have the single cans and the 4-packs. Obviously, it's more data to go through and to set up the system. But it has been so helpful for people to be able to do that. Like, let's say it's a Dubel that is usually something that we do once a year. So people just grab a can, and actually, if they like it, if we don't have it tabbed yet, you can actually go for a 4-pack instead of them doubting, like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna like this, and it's 4 cans. So what I will do if I don't like that, like, I trash the other 3 cans. So it gives you the option, even if you're paying a little bit more, to combine 2 different single cans and try 4 different beers and release multiple options. Then, like, maybe you try a sour, but you liked it that much, then you end up grabbing the 4-pack of a different sour that is not the same. That's what we have seen that brings up the sales with the single cans and have helped us a lot in both tap rooms.
It's almost like by doing that, you get to offload the idea of ordering a flight to then, buying those cans where people can pour their own flight when they get home. Certainly. And not tie up all of your bartender's time doing that kind of thing. Interesting and smart. Ben, from your guys' perspective, aggregating this, have you all seen some broader trends about what people, looking at data again in aggregate across a lot of different customers, about how some of those dynamics have changed in terms of what people order on draft, on premise, and what people buy for takeaway?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I have helped a handful of our customers and even worked with them to set up, kind of like you said, the flight or a mixed 6 or a mixed 4-pack, even a mixed case, kind of build your own. That way you don't feel like you're necessarily committed to 24 beers of the same thing, and being able to kind of pick and choose what worked for you while you were at a place. It is interesting. I used to do the same thing, and even coach my staff on this, is looking at that trend of like what your best seller is, not just by ounces, but then breaking down into the individual sizes, and actually using that data for it. Maybe you've got something that people buy a lot of tasters of, but then they never buy a real pint of it. Like, that's all they want is one little sip, and then they're like, no, thank you. Or you get, your best seller maybe is a West Coast IPA when on site, and the porter is not necessarily your most popular beer in the tap room, but maybe it's your best selling growler. The staff knowing things like that, being able to do that suggestive sell in the moment to be like, well, this guy over here is drinking the porter, and that tends to be my best selling growler. Like, I should suggest that, or actually throw it out there that we do have it in cans, 4-packs, 6-packs, build a mixed case out of it when it's all said and done. It is something I've seen across the board with a number of merchants, is even from my time in it, but as I've worked with other folks too, kind of digging down into those numbers.
Sure. Are there other kinds of, places where this, looking at some of that data and technology has helped you kind of unearth some either solving negative problems or creating positive opportunities, and finding different ways, and are there some, whether that's have you been able to profile, customers, or even look at, some of those kinds of broad trends? Is there any kind of intelligence going on back there, to help make some suggestions, and using this data? How have you guys kind of, been thinking about it in those terms?
We kind of look at data from a lot of different points on how to, profile customer. I think customer habits are a big thing. I think, like Juan was saying, what day you're running certain programming is going to have different effect. Like, I sell a lot more of the, here again, health conscious option of our 100-calorie loose leaf tea on the day that Run Club is in. Right. So I think you can kind of profile some things like that as to what's going on with who is in the brewery, and kind of notice what trends are going on from that. Another big thing that we've used a lot of that high level data on, and I've spoken about this at some other places before with Arryved, is one of the biggest impactful things to me was Arryved did a webinar with Bart Watson when he was still chief economist for the BA before he was the president of the BA. And a big thing for us is we started to notice what times people were coming in the brewery. And I had this delusion that I was going to create these new opportunities for where people would come into the brewery, and that I could drive morning traffic on Saturdays, or I could drive late night traffic on nights that I wanted to. And I started to see when we were in that webinar that this was pretty much nationwide, that people came into breweries at about 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday, and they stayed till about 8:00 and dwindled out about 9. And that was the arc, pretty much across the board, whatever state region you were in, metropolitan or rural, urban or rural areas. And I started to realize, instead of fighting human behavior, why don't we start to lean into that? Why don't we start to take all this beautiful data that Arryved just harvested from all these breweries around the nation and use that to our advantage? So instead of me trying to run music noon or 11 a.m. to get people in, or at 9:00, where I was really hoping that would drive traffic, we started realizing that we should position our bands on Saturday 4 to 7, because those were in our peak hours when we were most inundated. And what we actually did with that was enhance length of stay. And so now when people are naturally coming to the brewery, when we have a full deck, I always tell my staff, we want to shoot to the mountaintop as fast as we can and stay there as long as we can before it falls off, right? And so now we're seeing, that built-in customer that's already coming in. Instead of selling them 2 units, we're selling them 3 to 4 units, right? That's a 50% increase in sales in our busiest hours, right? Without any extra marketing, without any extra customer acquisition costs that we've got built into that. It's when are we the best, and how do we keep that party going the longest that we can, right? Until they decide to go somewhere else late night or to go home. And so I think profiling the customers into what music, what entertainment, what things they like there gives you a lot of power in that, kind of understanding that. And again, to Juan's point, then identifying what that actual crowd per night is, why they came, and then what their drinking, eating habits are. If you had a cocktail heavy crowd that night, whatever that may be, that we can kind of read and analyze from that data then.
Yeah, the most expensive thing you'll ever do is get a new customer to walk through your door. And one of the best ways to immediately increase revenue is getting the customer that's already there to buy another beer or 2 more beers. And, and so 100% agree with you on that one, Brandon. Juan, for you guys, how has that impacted how you think about like what you do on different nights of the week, how you'll use social media, how you'll create stories, to kind of fill out, because Saturdays are important. It's great to get more people who are there on a Saturday to stay a little bit longer and drink more. But it's also great to try to, fill in some of these lighter nights and, give people a compelling reason, to come to the tap room and to enjoy beer there.
So, we try to play safe with the days that, let's say Friday and Saturday, usually our busiest day. Whenever we can, we want to drop something special happening those days that we have the most regulars and the people are willing to come from early to late. For example, we're dropping the 12 ounces packaging this Friday that we know we're going to get crowded. So it's going to be a special night, special music. And whenever we see that we're having like rough days, probably at the beginning of the week, we try to focus like what to offer to that crowd that probably on Monday doesn't want to drink a couple of beers at the beginning of the week. So let's create a plan for them, a happy hour, an activity that it doesn't probably means drink a lot, but then we offer a special of food. So you want to stay in a more familiar, let's say family environment that you can enjoy without needed to drink six beers. So you drink 2 beers, but you got a really good food. And those are the main focus, like the slower days, probably Monday and Tuesday. We try to work like a concept, and then you have a crowd that is going to be coming repeatedly and spread the word so you can bring more people into those days. And monthly, to try to extend those beautiful days, Friday and Saturday, we try to do a big event. Let's say once a once a month we do like a concert of local bands so they can show up. So you have a different crowd of people that actually get to be in your brewery and get to be, let's say they bring 50 people and then you have 20 of those being regular after they know what you can kind of offer, not just because of the beer, but the experience you're trying to promote inside your tap room and with your beer and your food. I think that's the focus that we're trying to do to keep on growing each day of the week, relying on the data of those events, and whatever it doesn't work, we try to change it and work with the people and the staff of the tap room to get a better feedback of what those people are expecting to be and happy to be in the tap room all day.
Yeah. How do you guys use the kind of tools that you have here, whether that's like loyalty programs, memberships, special things that treat your most loyal customers with, the best kind of love and positive feedback, discounts, perks, whatever that might be. Do you all have programs around that? Because that can also be a great way to build some more activity on some nights that otherwise might be quiet. And I mean, that's also a problem that everyone in craft beer faces now. I'd rather get a customer there every week rather than every other week. If they're one of my regulars, can I get them there 2 nights a week instead of 1 night a week? Kind of building up, from the people, the audience that you do have, and giving them more reasons to come back in addition to just a new and great beer.
I'll say we don't track our loyalty programs as much as I would like. I do. That is a constant fight with my staff is how do we want to track? How do we want to put because that does create another opportunity to have someone have to manage something, right? And that's, I think, the biggest rub that we have. I think in a lot of ways we try to do it is create repeat programming and build in some loyalty to that, right? To where if you're a part of a club, if you're a part of something, we use punch cards a lot for that. A lot of things, though, you have to be careful, right? Because it's state to state. There is a lot of legislation on what you can do as loyalty, what you can discount, what you can offer someone as a reward for free beverage. Here in North Carolina, we're fairly on the cusp of a very, very conservative legislature here, and have been for a long, long time when it comes to alcohol. And so there's a lot of things that we're restricted by that we would like to do that we can't. So we have to find creative ways on that. Run Club, I try to incentivize with punch cards, not for how much they drink or to give away drinks, but can they get t-shirts? Can they get gift card opportunities? Can we create things like that for them to have equity? Another one is we've created Kids Eat Free on Tuesdays, right? Kids at breweries are a thing, whether we like it or not, most of the time for most of us. If you run a 21 and up brewery, let me know if you have applications out there. I'd love to talk about working for you. But no, the kids at a brewery are a very real thing. So instead of treating that as monsters or demonizing people that bring kids to the brewery, we'd love for you to come in, but we'd love to corral it on Tuesday because Run Club's not quite as fond of the kids running around on Wednesdays when they're doing their Run Club, right? So being aware of those things to where you can give somebody equity in their day. Most of the people, if you've ever, read books like 48 Rules of Power, things like that, where it talks about creating cadence and routine out of people, right? I don't expect somebody to come into my brewery randomly once a week if they're going to come once every week. I expect them to come Tuesday every week, right? And so what is that overarching program I'm running? And then we can kind of tie some loyalty things into that and how those people can get equity with us.
Ben, are there strategies that you guys have seen from from your 30,000-foot view that have proven to be successful for some of the other Arryved clients?
Yeah, we've got a couple of loyalty programs. One, some internally and some partners. I've seen a ton of success with them being able to offer either small discounts or even just encouragement. To Brandon's point, every state's a little bit different if you can offer a discount necessarily. But building that routine where it's like maybe on Tuesdays you offer a $1 beer just to draw people in. I've also seen some great successes with some of our partners being able to do push notifications, offering rewards purely for visiting, regardless of what they're actually buying, right? Especially to Brandon's point, if you got a family with kids, maybe they show up and everybody ends up eating, but nobody's really buying beers and you're not necessarily concerned about rewarding that, but just rewarding the behavior of showing up. And then also using that data to track it. Did it work? Right? Like you know, if you're creating a routine, are you actually having success with it? Or are you just like repeating a routine that's like doing nothing for you? Right? Lean into those day parts and those timelines. You know, if Saturday at 2:00 is the time, then say if you come in at Saturday between 2 and 4, right? Like they were kind of already going to do it, but now you're just guiding their decision making a little bit more. So yeah, I've seen a lot of successes out of those programs and being able to like reward folks for kind of doing behaviors they might have done already.
I'll say too, the number one thing, if you're running loyalty or trying to drive cadence or whatever it is stick with it. A lot of things don't work out of the gate. You may think you've got some banger night to where you created a game night in your brewery or a service industry night that's not taking off or whatever it is. It may fail for 6 months before it starts to work, right? Like some of the best nights in bars and things around Charlotte, people are like, oh, but they have this great open mic night. And I'm like, they've been doing that for about 7 years. You know, the first couple of years they did it, it didn't take off, you know? And so sometimes you got to keep cultivating something. There's, Lauren had a story from Arryved at one point about a small brewery, and I forget where it was, but the story went as such to, they had a Tuesday night to where they did a discount for teachers, where they get on loyalty program for teachers, come in, grade your papers, you get X amount of dollars off, right? Really good for teachers in the area to get to know each other too. Well, Wednesday night, they had first responders got 15% off, whatever it was, whatever the promotion was. If you come in, showed your first responder. Well, they ended up running a run club or something, an open mic night on one of the nights. And so they ended up combining the two nights to where teachers and first responders were on the same night. And it was this happy accident where it became the best singles night in the whole town because you had teachers now schmoozing with firefighters and police officers and vice versa. And so it was just this like great happy accident of how this night of just trying to run loyalty and reward programs really benefited that brewery.
That's a great story.
It's fantastic. Another use case for these digital tools in your brewery tap rooms is keeping an eye on potential negative behavior. Now we all love our staff. The beer tenders are great. But there can be some issues there, whether that's excessive comps, folks taking care of their friends, folks filling up growlers or pouring beers and not charging for them, or simply things like on certain taps, say pouring incorrectly and seeing an excessive amount of loss shrinkage on one tap line. How do you guys, maybe Juan, you can take this one. How do you guys use that data to identify, some potential, issues that might be arising, across the various kinds of ways within the tap room?
So specifically for that, we managed to also have a bar track in our system. So the way we keep on logging constantly, like how many kegs we move, how many we have connected, keep the volume, keep a track on it. We know for sure whenever we have a big event, there's going to be some things that get out of hand, probably by us itself, like pouring some beers to host the people that are coming. So you can keep in the meetings on Monday, like, okay, guys, like everything was good, but we lost, and we didn't put it in the system. That's one of the things that we ask all the team from the staff, like even if we're pouring the beers to give away because it's something that we do in these big events, let's keep a track on it so it doesn't look like, oh, we lost half a barrel of beer. No, we didn't. We just didn't put it in the system, and that way we lost track of it. We have some rules for the staff, like you have 1 to shift a days, and even though those need to be in the system so we can keep a track on it, it's not like a free wall, so you can pour the beers how many as you need. Since we have a lot of the team working earlier and then the taproom opens, but the taproom is always open for production team, let's say. So those are simple rules that we keep in the brewery, so to have a better track and we're not losing beer or giving away beer in a bad way. And the better thing is that the front of the house team, it's actually encouraging all of that. Like, you only have 250, or we don't give away any beer, and those type of things. They also let me know, for example, I don't know, the cold room was left open, so the beer were more foamy that day, and that's the reason you're gonna see a bigger loss in the tracking system.
Brandon, how do you guys manage some of the downsides of front of house operation using data?
I mean, definitely the tracking of beer, we're probably a little more lax than we should be on sometimes, because we have such a healthy margin in the product, and if we're going to give something away legally, we can't give anything away. If something's going to go on spill tab, we're gonna hope that that's a beer over a product that we don't make in house. And I think we really try to drill that home with our staff. But there are checks. We do have to go in and manage. As we run a full service bar here, we do have to go and manage our liquor and wine inventory, especially our NA product inventory as well, even when it comes down to craft sodas and things like that. As you saw me probably drinking a poppy here, those are things that we sell and that we have to make sure that they're accounted for. Another big one is, at the end of the day here, again, we're running a full service bar, we're running a restaurant as well. So that's where, we're not just a cool brewery at that point. We have to go back into the mindset of where I was at in food and beverage on what are our labor costs on food. We can manage that really, really easily with Arryved. What are our food costs that we have to go into, and what's going on waste? That's a huge thing for me is, look, if we've got to throw something away, if something got made, hey, look, if we've had a bad week in sales and you guys need an IOU and you need dinner tonight because you've had a really bad week in tips, let me know, but let's make sure we're accounting for that. Let's make sure that goes on a comp tab somewhere so that we can see what's going out of the house and that we can still know where our margins are at on things. So it's the biggest thing when you're managing front of house operations. I mean, coming from the restaurant world, Juan, I don't know if your background was there before, but we got into brewing because the margins are so much better in brewing. But when we run tap rooms, we still look at it as, most successful restaurants in America operate on a 5 to 7% margin. I mean, it's not huge margins. And so when you start giving things away, when you start pouring glasses of wine, you start pouring liquor drinks that are not accounted for, or even if, it's something as simple as you're pouring all your friends at the bar some free beers, that they're taking up valuable real estate that's opportunity cost that we should be selling through. You're eroding at a very thin margin there that we really need for operational quality. So knowing those COGS and knowing those margins is a really, really big part of the game.
Yeah, totally. You need to be aware of all of that, not giving away, or if you're going to give it away, you need to actually have a track on it. So you're not seeing like fake numbers and the Monday meeting, like, oh, we did a lot of money. Yeah, but you give away a lot of food. So that margin, it's bullshit. You don't have inventory now. You need to restock it.
Right.
So you're actually losing money when you do things like that. Obviously, the rules are we don't do it, but if we need to do it because it's a special occasion, you need to keep a track on everything. Giving away the beer, having a special thing for a special client that you're willing to take care of because, well, that's the relationship you're building. But yeah, the margins in the restaurant specifically are not the highest one, but it's also a good thing like to have, because that food brings you a lot of other beautiful things on the liquor side. That's probably where you get the money in.
And there's two. One, I don't know about you, but every philanthropic endeavor in our community knocks on my door probably twice a week somehow. So it's one of those things of, running a small business that is dedicated to the community. We want to be a part of as many philanthropic endeavors as we can, give back as much as we can. But there again, we have to track that. We have to know what our margins are, how much we can give away. I always tell partners, the more opportunity you create for revenue for me, the more opportunity I can have to get back to you. So using things like in Arryved, where there's tags on tabs to where we can tag out everybody that was with that specific group that day, that we know that, hey, wow, there was actually, $1,000 spent from that charity that was in today. They brought in a lot of people. We can cut them a check for, $100 back for what they did for us on that day, or $50, whatever your margin of operation is. So again, just being able to track. I always joke. I'm like, man, I don't know how much money all these charities think we make. I don't also understand why they don't go ask Anheuser-Busch for a check every now and then that makes so much more than we do. But we're happy to give back. But again, we just have to track it to make it make sense for our operations.
Yeah. You need to build an equation where it makes sense to you. How much are you giving? Because it's also a thing of the community. Whatever events you're doing, you're giving them something like in beer or in food, but they're bringing you enough people that you're gonna be able to retain and become a loyalty member of your brewery. So that's something that it's a good equation that you need to handle properly. That as we mentioned, you need to keep a track on all of those things to actually have the real numbers are not dreaming that you're doing some big money and you're not, because you don't keep track of inventory and things that are more important than just a relationship and give away some gifts.
Well, we've been talking for a while now. Let's try to sum it up with some kind of big picture advice or even specific advice for brewery operators, front of house operators out there looking to kind of optimize their approach to this. And maybe you start, Ben. If you were talking to someone operating a brewery today, and I should say you do talk to folks operating breweries every single day. What are 1, 2, 3 kind of key operational discipline kind of focuses that you would suggest that they pay the most attention to in order to be most successful with their front of house operation?
It's interesting. The trend I feel like we're talking about is using the scientific methods for things. If you're going to do something, put a hypothesis down, pick a day, stick with it, track your data, follow your trends, use the numbers, actually justify and find evidence for what you're doing, and check and adjust, right? You've got numbers, you've got facts, your ground level in your tap room, it's spitting out a ton of data to you. It's really then taking that information, checking, adjusting, trying a different method, and keep going at it, right? Like use facts and data to justify what you're doing and what you're seeing. There's lots of feelings that go inside of a tap room, and I think Brandon made a great point, right? Like he wanted to generate daytime business, but the nationwide trend was that that's not the thing. So like use real numbers to justify what you're doing, and kind of follow those trends.
Juan, for you guys, what are what would that big takeaway are? What are those kind of key performance indicators that you track the most, that you find are the most important that other brewers should be paying attention to?
Well, inventory and follow the numbers. As Ben was saying, like sticking to the plan that you're planning. Don't get too impatient. Like, oh, this event didn't work. Like you need to let it grow. Like at least give you 3 to 6 months to actually have a full of numbers that you can actually reach out and analyze. It's not something that if it doesn't work in 3 weeks, you need to kill it. Like you need to build a community. You need to build a day to actually people start to know and spread the word. So then you can analyze the number and actually say, okay, we're spending too much in this, so we need to change the route or modify something. So that's a big part of it. I think for front of the house, the more that you can teach them, especially on what they're offering, following up each month, doing like, let's say classes with back of the house so they can know actually what they're offering, what they're selling. If there's people asking how you brew the beer, we try to do once a year all the staff up front of the house, being at least a day with all of the production staff working on it. So it's not something crazy that they need to explain and call ourselves like, oh, hey guys, I'll do a beer ferments. Like, no, okay, you're going to spend a whole day to get that knowledge and properly educate the people that are willing to ask in the tap room. So I would say education, following the numbers, stick to the plan, and the customer service. Whenever we see something that it's going wrong or a bad review, attack it immediately, reach to the person, know what happened, talk with your team, actually get behind those things to give a better experience in general.
Sure. And then Brandon, obviously, there's a myriad of data points that people can pull on. There's lots of different information, anecdotal as well as actual data. Sorting through all of it can just, berry people, figuring out those key things that you need to pay attention to that are crucial to like operational decision making, can be important for you. What are those kind of key things that you look at that are kind of the health metrics that you operate under?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say know your numbers is the biggest thing. Know as many numbers as you can throughout your operations. If you're someone who is segmented to front of house or brewing, or you're an overall operator as myself, just know as many numbers as possible. I mean, Aaron Boone, the general manager of the New York Yankees right now, I guarantee you he knows every one of his pitchers' ERAs and his batting average of his guys and what their WAR is and what their, all of their stats. I guarantee you that general manager knows off the cuff. So treat it like that. Know every stat that you can. Know what your margins are. I think COGS for margins are a big thing. Know what your costs of goods are, whether that's cost of goods coming out of your brewery or cost of goods coming off of a truck that's coming into your tap room. Know what those are. Know what your margin is, because if you're not operating at a healthy enough margin to pay the bills at the end of the month, you're not going to be operating too long. Number two, I think it's per guest average is one of the most important things that people need to be focused on. Some people do a per guest average if you're tracking every one of your guests. Some people may do a per check average, and that's not always direct apples to apples of 1-to-1, because you may have a lot of parties that are swiping the black card for the company for 30 people, or you have a lot of guests that are coming in and paying for their significant other or friend. So however you track that, just know the per guest or check average and know how to increase it. Know what you're lacking off of those if you can enhance it with more food sales. If you're, a lot of people say, I don't want to replace beer sales with cocktail sales because the margin that we have in beer sales. You can do both. You can keep stuffing beer like you are and enhance cocktail sales, right? You don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul on this. And so I think knowing those opportunities that you have of how to push and how to upsell more things, keep the things you're doing right, just add on. What can we add on to that? And then number three is one that I audit a good bit, is to audit our staff and how they're doing, is audit their tip average. I want to check in after a lot of the shifts and fee specifically to shift and isolate people that are really crushing it when they're getting, 23 and 24% tip averages versus I may have staff members underperforming that are getting 16, 18% tip averages. And that's a really good way to audit and find feedback from your staff when people may not be able to give that to you honestly. The last thing that I'll say to kind of sum it all up for us, I think the biggest thing, Jamie, that people should know is listen to this podcast, tune in regularly, tune into every resource that you have, right? I mean, the podcasts like this, the webinars like I was talking about with Arryved, I mean, a lot of things that I got to hear from Bart Watson when he's talking as the president of the VA, man, the guy is aces. I've taken so much of that information and applied it directly to what I'm doing. Join your local guild, join your state guild, be a member of the BA, subscribe to magazines and publications, rub elbows with people as much as possible. I think, anytime that I share with my friends how collaborative our industry is, they get so jealous in whatever sector they're in because they're like, how do you guys steal trade secrets from each other that regularly? And then I tell them that we're willing to, and they think that it's absurd how we operate. And so I think that's the biggest thing is subscribe to podcasts like this, keep your resources at your fingertips, and be able to dive in and pluck as much from others as you can.
And that sharing is why craft beer went from a 0.5 percentage point of market share 25 or 30 years ago to, 10 or more these days.
13 or more now. Yeah.
13. Yeah. And I can't pull apart dollar share versus volume share, but we'll leave that one for another conversation. As Brandon said, support magazines, support media, listen to podcasts. It's music to my ears. And that is a great place to bring this to a close. Once again, this episode is brought to you interruption-free by Arryved, the all-in-one brewery platform trusted by hundreds of craft breweries nationwide. Built specifically for the craft beverage industry, Arryved combines powerful, customizable tools that simplify centralize service and operations, keep sales data in one place, and help breweries turn insights into action. Arryved works side by side with taprooms to meet their needs in real time because no two service models, beer lists, or guest expectations are exactly alike. By elevating the guest experience and streamlining the back of house, Arryved lets makers focus on what really matters: their product, their people, and their community. Learn more at arryved.com. That's ARRYVED.com. Thanks to all three of you for sharing your insights and how to use taproom data to power decision making at the brewery. It's been a real pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Jamie.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hope to see you soon again.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.